Welcome to Digital Ascendancy, a Powerline Info podcast series. Here on Digital Ascendancy, we are championing transformative digital solutions. This series of podcasts is all about providing knowledge on IT solutions in an easy-to-understand format.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Curtis Dery from Powerline, Vice President of Sales. I'm fortunate enough to have with me today Damian Serjeant, Country Manager for Veeam. How you doing today, Damian?
Doing great, Curtis. How you doing?
Can't complain, man. Can't complain. Obviously, a lot of video conversations happening nowadays, but looking forward when we can get together and break some bread.
You bet. Been a while since I've been on a plane, so I look forward to getting out there. That's for sure.
Well, hopefully it's not getting on a plane in January to come to Winnipeg.
I heard it's a little cold.
It's a little fresh. We'll call it. We'll call it a little fresh. So, hey, listen, I know we have a great partnership together. Lots of things happening in the market. Obviously, everyone's still obviously figuring out strategies around dealing with remote workers, disaster recovery, backup. And I mean, what a better way to have a conversation than with Veeam about that, right? With the market leader of what you guys do and how you address those problems. I think before we get into that, I wouldn't mind just, a few seconds in regards to, who Damian is, other than enjoying spicy lamb vindaloo. I mean, I know you're into that, right? And into your spicy foods and into playing some soccer. But what else can you tell the audience about Damian?
Damian has a beautiful. I'm actually quite impressed. You found the lamb vindaloo there. I'm quite surprised. Damian is based out of Toronto. I've been at Veeam now for 3 years. Country leader. I've got a beautiful daughter who's 11 years old who keeps me on my toes. And I've got a wife as well that works also in the industry in IT. From an IT perspective, I grew up right beside my dad, who started at Wang Canada with the computer. So I've sort of grown up in that technology space. Prior to joining Veeam, I was with Cisco, and being at Veeam, I got to say, has been really, really fun times. I've got a great team across all of Canada, including sales, technical, inside, marketing, channel, and we're about 100 strong in Canada today. So thrilled to be here and be part of this. And I want to thank you for our partnership as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. I mean, I have to admit, I got some Veeam green blood in me. I remember way back in my career, and I'm talking, that would be pushing 15 years ago. I sold one of the first Veeam licenses in Canada, actually.
Awesome.
It was way back ago. I remember talking to a few guys out of East Coast US, actually, and they were like, where are you in Canada? Like, what's Winnipeg, right? And we were looking, obviously, back then virtualization was just catching on, and people were wanting to figure out how to back up virtualization, right? So we did some due diligence and saw this Veeam thing coming up into the market, and that's when we first started looking at that technology. So yeah, definitely a long history, but we look forward to obviously the future too, with the recent announcements that with the acquisition that you guys just made announced on Monday. I don't know if you want to take a brief second to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So you were probably the first one to have a deployment in Canada of the now 14,000 across all of Canada. So thank you for that.
Wow.
And then from an acquisition perspective, we just acquired a company yesterday. We firmed up on it with a company called Caston. So regarding containers, we made a large investment in a market leader, and backup is a part of every story. And we want to be really relevant in that Kubernetes space. So we're excited about it. From what I understand thus far, there's already clients that are doing business today with Caston. And it just goes to another part of our portfolio that we can bring to our clients to tell that real end-to-end story.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? It is an end-to-end story, and you guys are bridging a big gap in the market. Everyone's getting into that containerization, hybrid cloud story, and again, that containerization gap is there of how people are securing it, managing that data, and all that stuff. So I think that's a really exciting acquisition that you guys made. And again, I think you'll be a front industry leader in that conversation. I think there's going to be a lot of catch up after seeing you guys being the front runner around that.
Awesome.
So getting into it, as a leader in the industry and in the Canadian market, and like you said, you have over 14,000 customers you guys are touching. What have you been seeing since initially the pandemic, and what are the trends, and what do you want to make some of the leadership in Canada from a business aspect, catch their attention of what they should be looking at?
Sure. So I mean, at the beginning of every year, I always look at, I'm sure you do as well, comes out probably twice a year. It's that top 10 CIO priority list. And I remember looking at it in January of this year, and it was along the lines of cloud adoption, application migration, security, which is always in that top 10, data protection, application mobility, backup. And you sort of fast forward to today, and it's very different. I'm sure that top 10 list. In fact, I look back to mid-March timeframe. And it took everything that you and I knew, and all the listeners on this call, it took everything we knew as normal, Chris, and totally flipped it upside down.
Yeah.
So I think business executives have done an extremely good job in focusing on getting all those people remotely dialing in to access data. They've acquired software as a service for email like Office 365, collaboration tools like Teams and Zoom and WebEx and so on. So they've done a really, really good job. But then at the forefront of this is that everyone's gone home now and they're dialing into the office. And we saw that surge. We saw the surge in laptops being purchased, in devices being purchased, VPNs, et cetera, et cetera. But you got to remember that the crown jewels of any organization is the data. Yeah. So I think the top 10 lists, and I know for a fact, and you watch the news every single day, the amount of security breaches happening, the amount of ransomware, malware, it's off the charts, and it's at an alarming rate. It was funny, probably about a month ago, I was curious to see, did anyone even call it of that top 10 CIO list? Was anyone even focused on work from home? And it's funny, there's a interesting stat in which they said 7% of the respondents of the CIOs actually had work from home as a top 10. If you look at it and fast forward to the one they did semi-annually, the new survey, it's now 85% on every CIO's top 10 list. So with mobility and people being able to access their data and being able to collaborate and keeping everyone sort of as one team, we're all working from home now. And I think people have realized, and specifically those who are willing to, or trying to access data from a ransomware perspective and security, they see gaps, if you will. And I can speak to myself specifically. I mean, I come home, I've got my laptop, which is a corporate, obviously, device, but then you look at all the Google Homes, and I've got 30 of them around the house, Curtis. Then you look at all my smart lights, and I have 80 of them. Then you look at my smart cameras and smart doorbell, and the list goes on and on. My smart printer to the right of me. So there's so many different devices with a home grade type router.
Yeah.
And people see gaps, and they're like, we no longer have to try to breach a corporate sort of a network, if you will. It's going after the homeowner. And now I talked about my wife who's accessing, and we all work from home. And you look at my daughter who's on Roblox, feels like 24/7, but nonetheless, she's surfing the internet. So there's gaps in which, our devices, are we locking them down collectively so that all the data, whether we're at home or in the office, is protected. So if you look to what the trends I'd see, security and that visibility across all the different digital devices is going to be absolutely critical for the remainder of this year, but also as we go into 2021.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, man. I mean, to your point, I'm a tech guy at heart, and I buy anything kind of new and cool to test out at home. And yeah, when I looked at myself and realizing, smart TV, smart devices. I mean, even from my fridge to, my washer and dryer, I can turn on with my cell phone nowadays, right? What people have to realize, right? All it takes is one IP address. I get an IP address, I get in, and it's just that one gap exposure that can cause that breach to be catastrophic across, the business. And now you look at it, the extension of the businesses, that IP now is in everyone's home to get access to the corporate data, right? And so now more important than ever, that data is king on how you have to protect it. And I think, I feel for all the industry and the companies that have, had to figure out how to, drastically pivot their businesses. But then, what do you prioritize? And to what you said, earlier, that top 10 list, it had to change quickly. But then with that, you got to shift the business, shift the architecture, shift the budgets, right? So there's a lot of moving parts to that. But I think people definitely need to prioritize the importance of business continuity and backup and really what it means to the business if it's not set up properly. And with ransom attacks, like you said, we're seeing it every day with our customer base. In the first, we'll call it month of COVID, we made some bets to help out our customers, and we acquired 10,000 units of laptops and desktops and sold those in the first 3 weeks, right? Because everyone's like, hey, everybody work from home. So we get everyone working from home. And then the next phase was like, how are you securing this and backing this up, right? And it was all of a sudden, oh yeah, we got to get on top of that now, right? And I think that's the message we got to get out there, right? To all these companies is like, don't take your eye. If you haven't been hit, it's just a matter of when, right? And that's the way that's happening. I mean, one of the stats I heard that scared the heck out of me was, doing an executive roundtable around security. They said 67% of SMB companies that get breached and ransom attacked won't recover. They'll go bankrupt. Wow. Because the cost to get out of it, the cost to fix it, and the cost to move on, they won't have the money to be able to do it. I just went, that's a scary number. And that was from a Canadian perspective, right? Never mind the global impact of that, right? So you factor on, obviously, industries getting impacted by, revenues and sales, and then you factor in that they have to have more money to protect, all their data, their security and everything. I mean, there's pressure and everything happening everywhere, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm with you, man. There's just so many things going on, but I think, again, it's just great awareness to have these types of conversations and let people know that, there's partnerships like ours and Veeam's that can come out there and help kind of, like I said earlier, plug the holes within the Swiss cheese for them, right? And make sure that they can go and focus on, their business and customer outcomes, knowing that they have the right IT and trusted advisors and technology to protect them. So yeah, it's exciting times, scary times, right? But the one thing I do like about disruption is it makes people get uncomfortable, think differently, and think outside the box and look at new ways to do business, right?
That's totally true. And it gives me a new train of thought. I remember this is probably about 2 months ago, walking around to every single device in the house. And for many years, and I'll call myself out for the many years, that pop-up that comes up all the time on your different devices, there's a firmware update, a security patch. And how many times have I said, remind me later?
Yeah.
Remind me tomorrow, remind me next week. And really, I mean, you look at it both from a corporate perspective in the data, but even from a personal perspective. I mean, God forbid, like our photos of our families and the memories over the course of many years. So you got to take a real umbrella security approach to everything we do. So there's no gap to the environment today.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I mean, I know working with my team, that's the message I try to make sure we resonate to our customers is whatever decision you're making, what is it doing to reduce your security risk profile? It doesn't matter what it is. If it's endpoints, servers, storage, anything that's related to it, backup, it all has to go, what does that do to reduce security risk, right? Because that's the most important thing. We know that. I mean, you take every illegal activity, put it together, it doesn't equal cyber attacks anymore and ransom attacks, which that's a crazy number when you look at it. And that number is not getting smaller. It keeps growing every single day. And I mean, every day we hear companies that you don't think that would get breached. And we all know they have big IT spend. But again, there's a hole somewhere that somebody's going to try and figure out, right? So
a lot of these, Curtis, you mentioned something, but from these breach perspectives and when they do get breached, what I find interesting, and they've changed the folks that hold them ransom, is before it was, I'm going to lock down your device or I'm going to lock down your environment and your data and you can't access it. And I want to say they've come a long way in which they're saying, you don't want to pay, no problem. We'll put all that data publicly so everyone else can access it. So you're really caught between doing the right thing, because like you said, there's a lot of name brands out there that have been exposed, and it's the brand that nobody wants to, or the data that nobody wants to be exploited.
Well, yeah, and it's that trust and relationship, right? Like if that customer wants to trust that you're looking out for the best interests of their customers and their data. And yeah, if that gets exposed, we all know, like I know myself being in technology, if I'm, personally, using a technology that got breached, I'm off that technology. I'm like, I'm not working with something that can't protect my interests, my data, my photos, whatever that may be, right? And that's the same in the corporate world. It's all about that trust relationship that you have. And maybe one of the things you can maybe quantify or talk to, Damian, from your perspective is, recovery costs and frustrations that businesses have and are experiencing from these type of attacks. Can you share some stories from your perspective that you see?
Sure. So Veeam has been all around the data and sharing stats with our clients and prospects. And a couple of things that I want to talk to today is, number one, if you look back at 2019, they said on average every 19 seconds, there was someone trying to attack from a ransomware perspective. Now you fast forward to 2020, and we know there was a slow period over the course of the summer.
Yeah.
But in 2020, that attack is happening every 11 seconds. So the attacks are coming. It's more frequent now. When you look to the amount of organizations, just stats say 93% of all organizations every year will be attacked. There'll be an attack on you. But for those that actually do get attacked and have some downtime, the average attack costs about $68,000 US per hour. And then if you look at the average recovery time, it's $84,000 per hour. But then if you look at, and I've done quite a bit of research on this, but if you look at industries or verticals that were targeted, even just through this pandemic alone, they were very specific on which ones they targeted up front. Some of the ones included government, transportation, manufacturing, education, which all our kids going, from school to home and then having to dial in. And in fact, even a couple of my friends work for the government in Canada. And when they were told to go home, it was quite simple. It was like, here's your device, or if you don't have a device, we'll get you one. But for the first 3 weeks, don't even dial into the corporate network, because number one is we got to increase all our network gear to handle all the traffic. And secondly is really have a security protocol in play around who can access, who can't. So it really changed that upside down. And then I'll speak to a manufacturing one. And I remember, I won't tell you what they manufacture just yet. I'll wait till the end. But one of my friends that I've known for many years, he called me at the tail end of last year. So say November, December timeframe. And he's manufacturing, running a line, I think it was 22 or 23 hours a day hot. So that's constantly, running a lot of product. And he calls me on a panic, and it was probably like around 7 or 8 o'clock at nighttime, and said, Damo, I got a call. I go, what happened? He said, we've been breached. And I said, so what does that mean to you? And he said, every single system, our lines are all down, everything is down. We can't even send an email. And so he said, is there anything we can do? And the first thing we asked him is, okay, what about your backup? You got a backup? And they said, yeah, we have a backup. So they checked their backups, Curtis, and they went back to the Thursday backup, and that one was corrupted. They went back to the Wednesday one, that was corrupted. Tuesday corrupted, and they went back to Monday. And just for the audience, I mean, if someone breaches your environment, they're going after two things. They're going after your data, and they're going after your backup.
Yeah.
So this manufacturing company, they weighed paying the ransomware through Bitcoin, and weighed also, they looked at their policies and actually who was able to access the data as it stood today. And it turns out they didn't have a very strong policy around accessing data. So they looked at paying the reward versus wiping every single endpoint in the environment and doing a rebuild, because they went to all the backups and they were all corrupted as well. So they wiped the whole environment. Needless to say, they lost 6 days of good sort of manufacturing time. And what they do is they actually manufacture hand sanitizer for all the major retailers in Canada and the Americas for that point. So we know hand sanitizers is in absolute demand, and I don't know if it was timing or whatnot, but through that time of being 6 days down, for all the POs that they needed and they sent out to get product to create the hand sanitizer, for all the POs that they received from retailers, when they actually came back online and set a policy that who can and who can't access the data, they had to manually go in just for compliance and record sequentially a PO that went out versus a PO that went in. So even though you get back up, there's impacts to the business that happen overall.
And that's missed sometimes, right? To your point, like it's not just the one domino that failed, it's the whole entire row, right? That's coming behind it. So yeah, you can get out of the ransom, but it's everything else that it was, impacted due to it, just like you're saying, that now you have to still deal with on top of running your business, right?
Totally true. And when you look to even some of the simple apps, Curtis, like you think 5 to 7 years ago, we probably could have made do without email for a couple hours. But now email is mission critical. We cannot be down, and for a number of reasons. I mean, it's the way we communicate, it's the way in which we transact, in which we track orders, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So just a lesson learned, and now a good Veeam customer today.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to learn those tough lessons, right? But great to hear that, recovery did happen, strategies now is in place, and now that, they're in more of a proactive mode versus reactive mode, right? I think it's just, again, it's prioritizing what is important. And I think people do have to fundamentally look at, yes, security is top of mind. Yes, extremely important, but that ties into backup being that, 1.5 number strategy just as important, right? It's just behind, security. It goes hand in hand because, again, if you don't have the business continuity and backup and something happens, you're done anyways. Even if you are breached and you put the best front end security in place, something could get through. And when it does, to your point, they're coming after the data and the backup, and if there's no recovery. And I think a lot of people underestimate the cost of downtime, right? I've asked a lot of people that number, and a lot of times they can't quantify it. They go, well, I think this. I go, really? Like, is that what it is? All in per hour? I go, I don't think it is. I think it's a way bigger number than that. And I think it's, people having to kind of help them educate and budget properly of like the new wave of IT and where you have to put the best dollar, the best spend, and back to reducing what that is from a security breach perspective, right?
We always, at Veeam, we have a rule. It's a 3-2-1 rule.
Yeah.
I think one of the lessons I took away from this and hearing a customer's pain points firsthand is they had a backup that was, maintained every single day, which they thought was great. But it's so critical for any organization to have one of those backups outside of the domain. So it should sit with another cloud provider or somewhere where, someone does not have access to. And that's just a lesson learned and best practice for anyone.
Yeah, and I mean, we've heard the stories over the years, right, of how many people, have you tested the backup? Yeah, we're good. And then they go test the backup, and the backup ain't working, right?
Very true. And Curtis, another best practice too that I learned from this scenario was, testing the backup, as you say, but as well is, God forbid, something happens to the team. And things should be documented, like you said, so anyone could actually put together a business continuity, disaster recovery, and run it live. And documentation, I would say, is really key as well to this.
Yeah, 100%. And I've seen some best practices in that, where one organization I've dealt with, they test it out twice a year. They bring all the key people in a room. They say disaster has now striked, and they take out the key people that know how to run the backup, and now test the company to see if they can run in that scenario. And I was like, man, I respect that, right? Because you're challenging everybody, but making sure, best practices are in place so that you are ready when that happens, right?
Absolutely.
No, I mean, that's some great value and great information. I mean, definitely, I think we could probably go on for hours, right? And tell some of the great stories and value of, what's in there and helping our customers. But I think, one of the things I'd like to, get the listeners out there is, what's an action item that you can extend from the Veeam side?
Great. So, if I look at the Canadian business and where we've seen tremendous growth as part of everyone working from home and SaaS offerings, like I'd mentioned, Office 365, I think an area, and I know an area in which we've seen massive adoption and acceleration. We've got an offering, Veeam Backup for Office 365. It's actually a free backup if you want to try it and download it and see how it works. And what we've noticed, just in this small period of time is Microsoft on their site has this shared responsibility model. And there's certain things that Microsoft is responsible for, uptime, et cetera, quality of service. And there's certain things that you as a user of the service are responsible for. One of them is data protection. And we talk about in employees, and they may accidentally delete a file, or malicious employees that want to delete a file, or hackers or ransomware. But it's your responsibility as a user and a user of that service to have a backup strategy around it. So I think if I were to sum it up, my ask of any of our listeners would be is go do a free trial of the Veeam Backup for Office 365. It's a 90-day trial, like I said. And Curtis, I'll throw it to you. Is you willing to put some skin in the game?
I mean, I'm always willing to put some skin in the game and put some bets out there. But I mean, definitely betting on the Veeam partnership is not tough for us. And I think maybe where we can put value in that is for any of the listeners that may not have the time to look at it and set it up and demo it, is we'd like to extend the free services to help set that up so that they can experience it, see the value, and understand that they're looking out for the best interest of their business of protection, and forging ahead in this market and this industry of disruption that we're getting through, that they can sleep at night knowing that they got continuity running with the Veeam and Powerland partnership.
Fabulous. And Curtis, we've done this many times before. It's like you said, it's a remote activity, but it's a really swift, nice opportunity for us to prove out something that helps. Because a quick fact for everyone out there is only 50% of the new data is actually protected. So if you start to think about that, you really, as you look to 2021 in your planning, is how do you get all the data and capture it? And if you know that some of these easy services like Veeam Backup for Office 365 and Powerland services can protect that portion of your data. We talk about mission critical email. It's a win-win, and you can know that that portion is protected.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting times. And I listen, I know you're super busy because, the conversations we've had, I know Veeam's having one of their best years they've had in a long time. So that kind of validates what's happening, obviously, in the market. So I don't want to obviously take up too much more of your time, knowing that you got to get in front of those customers and keep help protecting them and backing up. So I want to thank you for your time, the partnership, and being on the podcast today. I want to thank you for all that.
You bet. Thanks so much, Curtis and team.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe for more videos from Powerland, and remember to hit the notification button to get the latest videos from Powerland when they come out. Follow us on social media at Powerland_CA on Twitter, Powerland Canada on LinkedIn, and Powerland CA on Facebook to hear about the latest and greatest in IT solutions.